All right, enough of the black screen. We'll just come in here, Katie.
All right.
We'll fade the music down and get rolling. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Excellent. How are you? Beautiful fall day. Crazy storms rolled through central Oklahoma last night, so I was wide awake early.
Yeah. Do you need? I don't have the Instagram. Do you need to do that on your side?
Oh.
You need to turn that on.
Maybe.
I forgot to ask you about that prior.
Let me see if I can. I'm not sure if I can do that.
Because I don't see it. It's not up on the top of our deal up there.
Got it. I don't think it's going to let me.
Maybe if.
Wait, let me see. Please reach out to the team owner. Nope, I can't do it.
Okay.
I can't do it on my side. Sorry.
Unfortunately, we didn't cover that base with the captain, Jenny White. With the team captain, Jenny White being gone.
Actually, I did it last time, but for some reason it's got me blocked this time. So we'll figure that out for next time.
Yeah. Well, we're going to play the interview with Karmin and Jenny.
Yes.
But prior to that, give us a teaser for what we're going to talk about afterwards. And then also you've got a short little thing we're going to talk about before we play the video.
Oh yeah, got an interesting topic about Oklahoma politics after Jenni and Karmin talk. So I just want to add this here to the stage. So they're going to talk a bit about Charlie Kirk. And there's been all kinds of new information as that investigation rolls forward about his assassination. And this article that came out yesterday is actually from the Gateway Pundit. And what it did, let me actually make it a little bigger here so people can really see, is it dug into the ties that our intelligence and the FBI are looking into between the shooter and these militant progressive groups that have been in the background for quite a while. They're actually, particularly one of them here is the Armed Queers Salt Lake City, that group. And you can see these are different training and workshops that they have together and organize with other groups that they highlight here, lectures, training at gun ranges, those kind of things. So this group is tied, particularly those online connections, to the suspect arrested for murdering Charlie Kirk. And if you go down into this article, I highly recommend it because they go into these groups, including one that's called the John Brown Gun Club that is out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that worked with this actual group and has been coordinating to arm people within this ideology, arm them to defend their rights. So we are so far past live and let live in this and what's happening in the background. This wasn't just a kid who by himself decided to do this. There's a much bigger narrative behind this in these groups. And for what people in our world don't understand, there's a group just like this in central Oklahoma.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes, that is about LGBT rights and arming themselves and training themselves with firearms. And look, I will be the last one to tell you that an American shouldn't be able to possess a weapon safely, be trained. That is our right. And originally our founders said that's a right against a potentially tyrannical government.
Yeah.
That is how the democracy stays on cue. That doesn't appear to be what this is. They're not trying to be armed in case it was ever, God forbid, needed to protect the democracy. They are arming for LGBTQ plus rights, whatever that means. And we're in this world where words and violence have sort of become the same thing for a lot of people, this alternate reality. So things like Charlie Kirk's words, where he expressed his faith and he expressed about the nuclear family and expressed about what's healthy for young people. And he tried to teach them how to think for themselves on a college campus. That was seen as violence. And this is what these groups that are working together see as appropriate response. Thought it was a really interesting article before Karmin comes on and talks a bit more about Charlie Kirk.
Well, and I think it's kind of important for going along those lines from what you said. Their definition of rights is completely different than what we perceive are our God-given rights. And that's the real problem that the backlash from their community has, is they want us to accept their personal definition of what they believe they are and their rights are. So we just have this aggression from them because we don't accept what, their rights are not the rights defined in the Constitution.
You're right.
They believe it themselves, just because they're mentally ill, not all of them, but if you have all this dysphoria, whether it's gender or whatever, it's kind of a form of solipsism where your environment defines who you are, not you defining your environment. You're just victim to everything around you. But their own interpretation of what and who and how we operate in this world is their God, I guess, to them, Katie, and they can defend it the way they see fit.
You're right. And the words in this are so important when they talk about rights. Every time I have a lot of people in my life, a lot of people I'm related to, that we don't hold the same beliefs about a lot of these things. And so we do talk about them, and it constantly gets really emotional in those conversations. And I always have to back up, because every argument that they make is built on all these false premises about what these words mean.
Yeah.
And I always say we have to back up. Wait, you just said 3 different things that we have to define them, because we are not on the same page about that, and we can't move on about what's happening. So when you see the media coming out, say after Donald Trump came back into the White House, and you saw a lot of people within that identify in these groups coming out and saying, he's going to lock us all up. You were hearing the most crazy things that they were sort of espousing that were going to happen to them negatively. None of those things happen. But if that becomes your reality, this arming yourself becomes the response.
Yeah. Well, and we have to take into account also that the wordplay that's been going on over the last 10 or 20 years, where they're literally changing vocabulary, eliminating words, changing how the definition of words are applied, even, all the way up into the legal system, they're doing that. So, I mean,
Correct.
it's man, is it a slippery slope or what?
Yeah, we're halfway down that slippery slope.
Yeah. And we're seeing these things, like we were talking kind of in pre-show, we're seeing these things now manifest. These people are organized enough. They believe it, all the way down to their very core, that they're right and they can do these things, and they're going to, they're lashing out aggressively, just like what they did with Charlie.
That's true. And if you dig into this article, it's really interesting, because there's a young woman who's at the head of this Salt Lake City club. And she was given a big award in Utah, the first ever sort of this globally connected award. And she is also connected to several huge progressive global organizations. So you start to see about what is happening globally, sneaking down through these individuals into these NGOs, including this that's happening with the guns and people that call themselves queer thinking they need to be armed to the teeth.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, I was in a group text this morning with my wife and a bunch of other people, and they were talking about, how does this happen in a place like Utah? Well, that's almost kind of, in my opinion, it's an origination spot, because a lot of the Mormons, I mean, they've lived their entire time in the United States being like, you do you, I'll do me. You leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. I mean, that's the perfect place to breed these organizations like this, because they're going to be like, hey, you're not messing with us, we're not going to mess with you. And then it just continues to grow. And you got such freedom there, overarching freedom in a state like Oregon. So these places can really blossom and do things up there.
Yeah. So when you think about like Oregon and how it went from a relatively conservative state, if you look at Eastern Oregon, and now it's so progressive. You look at Utah, and I've said this before, some of the most so-called red, Republican conservative states have been targeted for policy and ideology to override the will of the people. We talked about the National Governors Association, our governor. We're getting our second governor in a row who will chair the National Governors Association. Utah has had 2 of them recently. That is an extremely progressive group that a lot of truly conservative governors said, we're not going anymore. In 2022, there were a couple of dozen of them that said, we're not doing it. We're not going to it. Our last 2 have doubled down and are now, have led the organization. And those policies are all around us. The green energy policy in a fossil fuel state, it's insanity. That came from the National Governors Association. The things that we're seeing with immigration, bringing in 26,000 Afghans off of the Biden withdrawal. That whole push is straight out of their handbook. We're seeing what's happening in schools, straight out of their handbook. Now it's hope rooms and no more discipline. That is exactly from the National Governors Association.
Wow.
So this is coming from above. This isn't disagreements among just people who live in a state who should be able to work it out.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got a group of people kind of creating a global international kind of code per se. And then you've got guys like Governor Stitt, Mary Fallon, these other governors that participate in these organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just kind of, adopt, say, hey, it's no different, Mary, than when we see teachers go out to these teacher meetings or these seminars
trainings,
with these retreats or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they come back and now they're talking a little different. They, and over just a couple of years, I mean, I've seen teachers literally change before my eyes. And we'll put a couple of these comments up and you'll have to read them because I can't see them on my screen.
Okay.
Because of my camera. But as an example, we had a real good family friend and she was going through a divorce. I was literally the only person that she could count on to help her move all her stuff, get into a new house, work on some stuff, help her layer floors, all this stuff. So go down the road. She's a teacher in my district. And when I ran for school board, she became massively radicalized to the left. She was so against me in every single thing. And I was the only person for years that would help her, do anything. And that's just what happens. It's crazy.
It really is. Sometimes it's a go along to get along because all of education is so progressive, but sometimes it's truly an indoctrination. So Lisa says, and I agree, I think this would be the case. If locking up gays became a thing, the streets would be filled with armed straight folks ready to defend their rights. And I absolutely believe that in America to be the case. And OK's Purple Rhino says they will lash out at the wrong place at the wrong time, causing a major uproar of a sleeping lion. It feels like a lot that we're living that with the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Lisa says, California was red just a few decades ago. As California goes, so goes the nation. What's ironic about that? So I have worked for the Oklahoma Department of Human Services within child welfare, county level and state level. And I had worked at the State Department of Education under federal funds in the past. And I went to California for an education, so-called, you got to go. If you get this federal money, you got to show up at these conferences. And it was, middle 20 teens. It's when I knew I went to California for one of these education conferences. It's when I knew we were in trouble. It's exactly when I knew that this was the case. So you are just spot on. Let me get a couple more of these comments. The first point on their poster is agitate us. Agitate tells us everything we need to know. Exactly. That you're not looking for peace if you're seeking to agitate. Michael, show us your t-shirt.
All right, this is a good one. Let me get over. Gay frogs gave me COVID. I get a lot of stares from the Vax crowd when I wear this shirt. This is another shirt that my wife does not like me wearing.
Go along to get along is true, but sad. Get away from that mindset. Yes. And if two parties said go along to get along, it's kind of the live and let live. If two parties agreed to that and it was really agreed to, and it was with a mutual goal of peace, we might be somewhere else. But just like Lisa said, if the goal is agitate, I don't know how we're getting there. Okay, Earl's daughter says, when people are redefining words, manifesting non-existing entities, and inciting violence, it's important. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry.
Yeah.
That's from James 1:9. That's a great piece of scripture there, Earl's daughter. And she's laughing at your shirt.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and on that last comment from Earl's daughter, it's pretty, and this is how I say that same thing to my kids, just plain and simple. In life, people really want you to react to everything. They want you to just blatantly react to whatever it is, whether it's advertising, someone picking on you in school, saying something to you, whatever it may be. They always want you to just react. I just tell my kids, I want you to just take a second and think, and then you can respond. Actually, don't just react. Don't be reactive and toxic in every single situation. If I ask you to do something, don't just go crazy. Just think about why I'm saying that to you and then respond. And that's kind of that thing that's happened in society. We're so instantaneous because of our phone.
Yes.
If you don't get it, if you don't look at your text message immediately, or this or that, or we're so instant in everything that it's so much easier to control us now because we're so reactive, whether it's something Trump says or something the left does or something a trans person does or whatever. I mean, we're all just so reactive, and I hope we can take a little bit of time and be more responsive than reactive.
Wouldn't that be nice? There was a piece of data that was widely cited at trainings and things of people who worked with kids and about healthy child development. And it was about outcomes for kids, right? And things are going really well on all these levels: health, mental health, academics, socially, all of those things. And what they found out, the number one factor for your kid to be doing well and healthy in all these areas was not what you think, the quality that they need. The quality came out to be the number one indicator if a child was going to do well going forward was the ability to delay gratification.
Yeah.
And we've lost that completely. Everybody banging out their responses to everything. Everybody's responding immediately. They're not thinking before they're talking. It's the opposite of delaying gratification. So things have changed.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right on with that. That's something I haven't used with my kids in a long time, is just that term. I mean, I kind of try to help them, teach that concept in one way or another, or learn that concept, but I don't ever really just say, hey, you want delayed gratification, more so than just all the instant. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I need to put that back in my vocabulary.
A couple more quick comments before we go to this video. I suspect the UN, SDGs, WEF, WHO is in the background driving this. Well, you should
100%.
If you read that Gateway Pundit article, there's a young woman that connects those dots. So your good hunch, good instincts. Their poster was the actual biblical rainbow, not the usual gay rainbow with only 6 colors. Oh, that's an interesting observation. Very interesting. We've trained an entire generation to have zero attention span and embrace instant gratification. We sure have. Technology has definitely not helped there.
Yeah, we know. And on that flag piece, I was driving home a couple days ago and I saw a flag, painted on something, a gay pride flag, and I don't care what, if you're gay or not, that has no bearing on me. But I was thinking, what does a flag actually represent? A real flag, like your country's flag, your state flag, it represents first your border, period. Mm-hmm. That's your border. It defines basically a language and a culture. I mean, that's what a flag basically defines. What does a gay flag define? Your sex. I mean, it has nothing to do with any of that. It's just saying, hey, I have sexual issues. Well, okay. So what? I don't need to see your flag. I don't have to have it painted on the sidewalk in front of me. We are far
past our private lives being private. Now we have these private lives that have to be out there. And a flag also signifies allegiance. Yeah. Your loyalty. So that's your highest point of loyalty in your life, is to other people who have the same sexual attraction. Yeah. That's it. No other ideals, nothing bigger.
All right. Well, let's play this video with Jenni and Karmin.
Let's do it. Carmen's been really an interesting figure in Oklahoma politics in that she's done a lot to track. She has a website where she tracks where the money's coming from with a lot of our elected leaders. So interested to see what she has to say.
Yeah. Well, and we'll just hit Denise's comment, or Lisa and Denise. They've got a couple right there. Right.
That one we already got. Let's get this last one. Julianne Romanello does a YT video on understanding the UN terms and what they translate to. Oh, I need to go check that out because they are speaking a different language. There's an internal code in that cult. So thank you, Denise.
Yeah. All right. Here's Jenni and Karmin.
Hello, Carmen Greider. It's been a while since we've talked.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm amazing.
How are things?
They're going really well. And quite a few things are happening right now, and they're all going very well.
Man, you can't beat that, can you?
No.
I can't say that. I've actually got a dryer on my floor downstairs on my wood floor that got wet. So, there's always something going on.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we had a really great conversation at the Boots and Bling, and we wanted to be able to have a conversation after that conversation. So it's just taken us a while to get together here. And in the meantime, we had a really tragic thing happen, and that was the death of Charlie Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
You have any thoughts on that?
I do. And where to start on, I have more than just one thought on it, and where to start. It was clearly a tragedy. It was an assassination, and who did it and why, they believe they've caught the guy. They think he's part of a team. I would have to say I do believe that it was a team thing. Because looking at him, you can't tell me that he has that kind of experience without any kind of help. And I did see the videos. I saw the close one and I saw the one from far away. I think there's questions about the guys behind him. It did look like a couple of them were giving hand signals. His neighbors said people were coming in and out the weeks leading up to. So I think that if there's an administration that's going to get to what happened, I think this would be the one. Hopefully it doesn't turn into JFK and then we find out the truth in 65 years. You never know who might be involved. If there was an asset from a rogue inside or from some outside intel agency, we may not get truth on that, but it's always a possibility, especially with somebody like Charlie Kirk. I heard one guy talking about the post-Trump era and neutralizing any kind of Charlie Kirk regime before it could even happen.
I heard that too.
I said, oh. And, sometimes in these ethics classes or whatever, I'm not talking like at a university, but like people put on a class on YouTube or something, and it'll be like, propose a question of, well, if you came across Hitler when he was young, what would you have done?
Yeah.
And I think it's a curious thing what happened to Charlie Kirk, and with the brainwashing that's taking place amongst the left, especially with the what is it? It's not an echo chamber. They're creating an echo chamber that words are violence, conservatives are fascists, Trump is Hitler, and anybody supports him is they're creating the environment with the intention of things like this happening because it's very convenient for them. So I think somebody took it seriously, but the thought has crossed my mind that perhaps they were aided by someone very experienced, and whether within that team was an asset. That's kind of like what I'm getting at is, can capitalize on people like that. When they're talking about his roommate is a man transitioning to a woman, you see that at play these days, that's ever increasing, and the mental instability. And then you talk about what Elon says about the woke mind virus. I think that what we would formerly have classified as mental illness is deemed normal by many on the left, and all of that just creates an environment ripe for someone who is unstable and brainwashed with the social media aspect of it, the instant gratification, going viral, becoming famous. And then somebody like that can be quite useful to someone who is connected to a part of a system that would benefit from not having Charlie around anymore. So whether that is the case or not, I mean, I obviously can't say. But those are just some initial thoughts on the political aspects of it. But what it looks like here is, man, were you on social media after all that happened and able to see what others were saying who were not for him?
Yeah, it's been ridiculous. I mean, it really has.
How
And that's
chilling has
kind of
that
a
been?
discussion to have in and of itself, because, there have been people who have said, well, let's take there was a veterinarian in Edmond that has actually been, I mean, he got run out of town on a rail for, saying, hey, this is great. We shot Charlie Kirk. And there's an argument, I think, to be had over free speech. I mean, it's certainly the right of people to, have their ability to speak, but you can't scream fire in a crowded theater either. So what's the tension there? How do you work that tension out?
I think I am certainly in a position in door knocking. I will say that I am door knocking, where I can have those conversations face to face and have the time to discuss them. In a social media forum, people they're gonna say what they want to say, and they're not gonna be open to anything else. So when it comes to this, because I've seen the analogies of, the two lawmakers in Minnesota and George Floyd and all these other people, and it's completely different. Charlie Meadows was assassinated in broad daylight.
You mean Charlie Kirk?
I mean, yeah. That's Charlie Kirk. I'm in Charlie Meadows' backyard right now. Not literally. But Charlie Kirk was assassinated in broad daylight, allowing others to exercise their freedom of speech in a back and forth open dialogue. Okay. Charlie Kirk was a very, very much a proponent of what you could call classical liberalism, which is the free speech, the debate, Socratic method, different things like that. This other guy was isolated on top of a rooftop, very far away from somebody, and he was very closed-minded. So you've got Charlie Kirk, an open-minded individual, allowing others to express their thoughts without fear of physical harm. And then you have this guy who believed that Charlie Kirk's words were violence, and he used violence to take his life. And it's what that means for somebody to celebrate that is a demonstration of a worldview in which they believe that anyone who disagrees with them should not be able to live. They should be killed. And so you have people in professions like healthcare, childcare, education, defense, and they're advocating the actions of an assassin who killed someone for engaging in open dialogue and freedom of thought and all of these other conservative things. And they're saying that they agree with that. They no longer have the it's not the mental capacity, the judgment, the
I think
unbiased
judgment.
judgment. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
I think
unbiased
judgment is the right
judgment
word. Yeah.
to provide their service equally amongst everyone, which is what they're required to do in their job. So, as a business owner, I would, of course, terminate them because I cannot. It's just utterly appalling. I'm dumbfounded. I never would have thought it would have had such a reaction amongst what you would think are everyday Americans turning out to be extremists and internal terrorists, basically. They are championing a man who killed someone for exercising free speech for himself and for creating an environment and facilitating for others to do the same. And people will talk about, oh, you're canceling people, and Charlie Kirk would have been against that. So freedom of speech doesn't come out with consequences, because if you eliminate that, you're also eliminating others' freedom of speech in the process as well. A company
Well, and my
doesn't
thought
have.
was, and I thought you said it really well, because I'm like, do I want to get into an airplane being flown by somebody who wants to cheerlead the assassination of a person who was simply engaging in talk, just dialogue? I mean, do you want to send your child to a school to be taught by a teacher who has said online and has allowed those feelings to come out, that they were so serious about them that they needed to get those feelings out someplace, that they were happy that somebody was assassinated? I don't want my kid sitting.
Yep.
And the important part is,
And you don't
taxpayer
have to have your
dollars
kid
too.
sitting there either.
Well, for sure.
Yep. And you are not required or forced to have your child there. So you are exercising your rights to remove your child. You are exercising your rights to say what you will about that individual. You're exercising your rights to protest, to lobby, to all of these different things, just as they claim they were exercising their freedom of speech to advocate and celebrate the murder, the assassination. I'm not using murder. It's an assassination of an innocent man. And you can't go through and delineate between all of that. That's exactly what's his name, Tyler Robinson, the assassin, did.
Yeah.
He chose his rules, and if everybody were to force others to live by their rule, there's no agreement there. You don't even agree with yourself from one day or even 1 hour to the next, especially somebody like that. So I saw somebody on X getting upset because people were saying she shouldn't work where she is anymore, all this stuff. And she's coming out complaining like, oh, these people disagree with what I said. They're trying to get me fired from my job. You have your life. They didn't try to kill you. I know somebody that they did kill for doing that, and not in the way that you used it. So to me, that example right there.
Can you hold on 1 second? I'm going to have to pause a second. Hang on. Pause just a second. Go ahead.
So here we have this woman who's complaining about all of these people in the comment section dogging on her and trying to get her wherever she works, them to fire her, something along those lines. The details don't really matter, but the irony of it is, if we were to apply this woman's logic, not just her logic, but her laws of being able to kill someone for disagreeing with us, she would be dead. Like, she didn't even see that, and she's complaining about people in the comment section being mean to her. Nobody's threatening your life. Like, they don't see that. And to me, that right there is it. I think that you could classify that as narcissism. only what they believe. Everything revolves around this individual. And that right there, I think, and as I was processing the assassination, it comes down to two world beliefs. One which Christ is at the center, and what that leads to was a man having open dialogue in an open venue amongst thousands of people who he knew the territory he was in, not physically, but like when you go to such a level to educate people with the truth, you do become a target for the enemy. And I'm talking about like supernatural, whatever. So he knew that what happened was a potential outcome, and he did it anyway. So he was willing to give his life for this. Then you have another man who has a totally different worldview, and I'm going to take it from the top down. He was isolated. He took a man's life. Who was at the center? Him. So you have Christ is at the center, and you have self is at the center. And that is the total difference between the two. And you can see that now exposing itself from in individuals all over the world. In one question, how did you react to Charlie Kirk's assassination? If you celebrated it, it immediately shows one worldview. If you mourned it, even if you disagreed with him, it shows the potential, at least, for another worldview. And I think that right there, turning point was his organization, and I believe that was very foreshadowing or prophetic or forecasting, however you would like to describe that. I believe that it was, and it drew this line from which we can no longer return, because once the curtain's pulled back, you can't unsee it. These people are coming out of the woodworks with this belief, and like I said, they're in all of these service professions, and that is a chilling thing. Now, on the other hand, to see in giving his life and in the way that it was done, he clearly wasn't advocating violence. He wasn't fighting. Look at the ripple effect that has had. Millions of people are now engaging in open dialogue and not threatening violence. You don't see cities burned down. You see people wanting to get informed. You see people standing up. You see people leaving a party that they have been a part of for ever since they could register to vote. And I think that too is another indicator of these two different worldviews. And we have reached a point where you can't go back. It is a turning point. And I think what we're going to see from here on out is polarization in two different ways. The more extreme of the fringe, because you've got self-centeredness in two fringes. I mean, the most bitter MAGA who claims to be a Christian could carry out the same thing, against somebody else. It's a human thing. It's not red and blue. It's not black and white. There's no symbol attached to it. Like, and you see those coexist stickers. It's none of those symbols. It doesn't have a badge. It's a human thing of who is at the center. And if you have a man who loved unconditionally, who gave his life, then and at your center, then that is what is going to reflect in what you do. And if it's you, there's going to be no pattern. It's all going to be conditional. If you agree with me, then X. If you disagree with me, then X. And you're going to see that in every aspect of their life. And this one thing is the most telling of that. And when you see people expressing in celebration of him, it's just, I'm not going to take that chance. So we're done. I've unfriended a lot of people on my social media. When I see that, I'm just like, unfriend, because somebody had told me, oh, you're canceling them. I was like, they don't have a right to my social media account.
Well,
I am not
and
obligated. It is a privilege for us to be friends on these media. It's not a law. They don't have a right to my account. They're like, touche. So I changed my mind, in that. But yeah, I don't have time for that. And frankly, with what I'm doing, like, it makes you stop and think.
Well, you can't deal with people who aren't rational, and I think one of the things that bothers me so much is newspeak. I mean, so many people haven't read 1984 and they don't understand what newspeak is. But we are living in that age where people have literally taken a word like normal, for example, and demonized it. So if you say normal, then that refers to the heteronormative male, misogynistic, and they go into this thing and you're like, wait a minute, you mean the traditional family? And people don't really put that together, the fact that they despise the traditional family, and by demonizing the word normal, you can't have a conversation with somebody who is irrational enough to think that having a nuclear family is a bad thing. I mean, it is anti-society. I mean, I don't know how you can have a conversation with a person like that, because that same person's going to turn around and dance on your grave and say
Yeah.
how happy they are that you're dead. So
Yeah.
but then there's the other side, and I'm curious about your take on this, because I've seen a whole lot of Christians and Republicans demonizing Democrats. And I just recently started a podcast with a Democrat called Common Ground, that we're going to have a couple of Mondays a month, and where we just talk, our differences out. People have, how can you talk to a Democrat? How can that Democrats are evil? Democrats are not evil. There are people who are evil, but we're labeling things. And I don't remember Jesus labeling anything but sin. He didn't label people. I mean, I guess he said sinners, and he definitely did call the Sadducees snakes and vipers. So maybe I need to take that back. But I do think that that's probably one of the worst things that we can do, is play the same game back.
I agree. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is the old law. And what is the new covenant, and how are we called to live? And it's even deeper than that. Is you get to a point in your relationship with the Lord of it's not even a matter of being called. It's just a matter of, wow, I understand what he did. And you don't just sit there and do your rituals and call it good. It's like I said, it's the two worldviews. You have one who's at the center and the other, and a person going to a religious service and all of these prayers and reading from a book, and I'm saying it vaguely because you can plug in any religion in that. Yeah, yells at his or her wife or her husband, whatever. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, because you can have someone who comes across as devout, and they say one thing and they do another. I mean, we have politicians doing that. Why wouldn't we have religious people doing that? And whether it's a man yelling at his wife, or a wife yelling at her kids, or a husband and yelling at both of them yelling at their kids, or riding the tail of somebody going 35 miles an hour who's 80 years old and is about to make a right hand turn in a quarter of a mile.
And
They
you're
want to
just
make sure
screaming
they
at
get
them.
it. Just give them grace. Yeah, give them grace. And
Yeah.
there's no difference. It is who is at the center. If it's Christ, then you're going to look at that person from behind. They've got their blinker on for a quarter of a mile and they're driving slow, and you're going to say, I'm not gonna judge them. I'm not gonna pretend to think that I know what they're doing is wicked and evil and intentional to me. So that transcends, like I said, it transcends the symbol, it transcends the color of a party affiliation, and it transcends the color of a skin. It's a human thing, because if you are a believer, then we are all his children. and we can make decisions that reflect that we believe that or not. And I think in terms of aggression, that comes down to case by case scenario. Like if somebody's attacking you, like obviously, what are you going to do? It is love can be firm and you can defend. But at the same time, when it
Well, and
comes
you
to
have a right to
conversations
protect
like
your own
that,
life.
exactly. And that would be the loving thing to do, especially, when you're also protecting somebody else's life as a mother. But if we get into just these formulas and rituals of this is how we're supposed to respond because it says X, Y, or Z, then you miss out on the gold and the opportunity that's there. Like, who better demonstrated that than Charlie Kirk? How many accounts did I see of former transgenders coming out and saying Charlie
Yes.
Kirk saved my life?
Yeah.
That's what gets me, is all
Yeah.
of these people that he gave the grace to have a conversation with, because they just simply don't know the truth.
Well, and
Put
I'm not
them,
necessarily I'm not sure that they want it, because I'm
and
looking.
that's key. Yeah.
Yeah,
Who's
they
at the
don't.
center?
Yeah, exactly. They don't
If
want
you
the
are at the
truth
center,
because they
you're not going to
want to
want it.
feel that hate.
You're going to want to reinforce who is at the
Yeah.
center. And it's either Christ or it's yourself. And when it's yourself and it's according to religion, you do these things to make who feel good? Yourself.
Yeah.
Because as a Christian, if that's the religion that you're practicing, you don't have to do anything. You don't.
Yeah.
He did it. He
Yeah.
already did it. So if you're going on these crusades to in an aggressive and violent and it's out of bitterness and hate,
Yeah.
who is at the center of that? And that, like I said, that doesn't excuse the ability to demonstrate love in a firm and protective way, but you can tell when someone has bitterness, and you can tell when someone is just simply protecting. There is that self agenda and there is that selfless agenda. And that is the turning point, is now we are able to see that very clearly, and not just in high profile individuals. We are able to see it in everyday professions of people who are trying to care for us, our children, and we can't go back from that, because that will be, for me, that will be a vetting question from here on out. Whether someone asks me that or I ask somebody that, is tell me what your thoughts are on the Charlie Kirk assassination. I will be asking that question, because that will demonstrate a worldview, and I will make my choices according to the worldview that is being expressed.
Well, and that's kind of what the way my feeling was about it too. I actually put on my Facebook page the comments that the veterinarian in Edmond had made, and I didn't make a statement about it. I just said FYI, because people should know who they're dealing with, and if they don't want to deal with them, then that's fine. I personally felt like it just went completely off the rails, and Christians were like rooting for this guy to go out of business. They were rooting for bad things to happen to him. And I'm like, that's not where we are. You should have the ability to know who you're dealing with and say, that's not a person I want to do business with. I'm out. But that's where it stops. You don't incite other people then to come again. I mean, to me, that just went way too far. And if you were a Christian and you were one of the ones cheering the fact that he went out of business, I'm like, nope, you missed the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to go about that. If everybody just said, okay, I see him for who he is, I'm not taking my business there anymore, he'd have
Yeah.
gone out of business.
Yep.
But to add like I said, any kind of bitterness or vengeance, that's the word
Vengeance.
that I think that vengeance is mine, says who?
Saith the Lord. The Lord says
Exactly.
that.
And so for
And we're
us to
not him.
become Right, for us to become, take those things into our own hands out of that kind of a heart, as opposed to wiping the dust off of our feet and continuing on. Those are two different things. So I grew up, my dad had me read The Lord of the Flies, Animal Farm, the Oxbow incident, which dealt with, I believe,
Wow.
vengeance and vigilantes. And and I took my beliefs in my own hands as I got older, and I was able to. And I tested what my dad taught me when it comes to ideology and worldview and politics. And you just go down the list of the things that factor into your worldview. He was right about everything. And now, I mean, of course, we saw the things that were coming out into Animal Farm under the Biden administration, and Lord of the Flies, we're seeing that right now. And I hope that we don't see the Oxbow incident. It's
I don't know the Oxbow incident. Tell me about that.
it was about a bunch of vigilantes that took the law into their own hands and hung a man, and I believe he was innocent.
Okay.
And that's what my prayer was immediately, was that we would have a body that believes that mercy and justice are adequate,
Well, and
and
due process.
yes, so I'm talking values. So under mercy and justice, you would find due process, right?
Right.
And when I say mercy, I do not use that term to mean acquiesce, appease, lay over, allow these people to whatever.
Let them
Because,
off. Yeah.
right, because what is mercy? But mercy's intention is to lead you to love, right? So an act of mercy could be a sentencing to 120 years in jail, because that's what leads you to the Lord. That could be an act of mercy, if that is what that individual needs to come to the realization that he is slave, and that's how I see that. I see the border wall as an act of mercy, because in deterring them from coming across where they are not going through the proper protocols, it deters the human trafficking, the smuggling, the disease, and all of those things. And to me, that is an act of mercy, is that wall. And when I say border wall, I'm also talking about the immigration laws as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Because when you don't follow those things, you get outbreaks of diseases. You get Representative Humphreys tells me that when he went down there, he saw a tree with all these clothing items on it, and those were trophies for the human traffickers and how many young girls they raped. And he would see other things hanging on them that were just horrendous, that are signs of certain gangs. And as much as I would love to share that, it's just too gruesome.
Yeah.
And love to share that in terms of eye-opening and awakening people. It's just absolutely too gruesome. But so to me, that is mercy. So when I use the term mercy, I'm not saying let the guy go. I'm saying allow the instruments that have come into place for a reason to do their job and do justice. And at the
Well,
same
because
time,
that's
like,
the big word, right? Is
right,
justice.
yeah. And at the same time, there are also natural principles at play: what you reap, what you sow.
Yes.
And while I'm going to do what I can to help others understand that that is a very dangerous natural principle that you don't want to toy with, I'm not going to waste my time on it. I'm going to wipe the dust off of my feet, and I'm going to continue, because sometimes, what do? You hand somebody over to whom? If it's their self, it's not Christ. And what does he say? If you're not for me, you're against me. who would their father be in that terms? Wouldn't be the Lord. There's only one other master, and quite frankly, like I said, I'm just going to bring it back around. That transcends party affiliation, that transcends religion, that transcends skin color. It is a human thing. And man, it is. It's chilling when you cross that line in an era, and I believe that we have. So will be highly interesting to see all of the ways that the ripple effect of this assassination take place.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, you had said you only had a small amount of time because you have a small person with you. So
somebody's peeking at me out of the window. I can.
Come on, Mom, let's go. Well, Karmin, it's been a joy to chat with you, and we need to have you back on again, because the one thing that you do have somebody who's working on the KarminGreider.com website right now, right?
Yes, myself.
Oh, okay. So you're back to working on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I haven't touched it in a few weeks. That is something that over the holidays I will be updating the data, and I'll have the time to just get profiles up.
Well,
Yeah.
and so many people have used that, and we've, it's such a great website, and it's so helpful to people before they vote to know how these people
I'm
are
gonna get it locked and loaded for
collecting their
election
money.
season. I have Chris Kennedy up because everybody knows that are in tune with kind of the political world in Oklahoma what position he holds. I have Kyle Hilbert up. He's the speaker. So those are two that I want to get up so that people could see the truth. And then I have Brian Hill up, and it just so happens that he's running for lieutenant governor. Just cracks me up. That guy.
Yeah. Yes. But he's so tired.
Economic development. He is the economic development guru.
He definitely is. The chamber is very happy to have him as their pseudo spokesman. Yes, for sure. Well, Karmin, God love you for taking the time to be with us today. And I wish we hadn't had just such a heavy topic to talk about, but I hope that we can see you again, maybe on the other side of the year, and hear about your plans for the upcoming year.
Yep, that sounds great. I would love to do that. I think I will have the time to dedicate to that.
Perfect. Then we will get back with you then. And thanks so much for taking the time. We really appreciate you.
Thanks, Jenny. It's good to see you again. Do you love my background?
I actually do. It's beautiful. So beautiful. It really is very pretty. Thanks again, Karmin. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye, Jenny.
Bye.
Oh, wrong template there.
You're okay. Yeah, some interesting words. You could really hear that smart young mother processing everything about Charlie Kirk. Pretty interesting. She was kind of a voice for what's going on in all of our heads about this entire thing.
Well, and I want to make a couple comments. I mean, I appreciate a lot of things Karmin said. She was talking about the brainwashing and stuff like that. And I think, to me, Jenny is too nice sometimes. I mean, Jenny is always kind of first is try to understand, loving and forgiving and things like that. But for me, Katy, what it comes down to is these are very, very irrational people. They don't think like we think. You can't just, in my opinion, we can't just keep showing ultimate mercy, ultimate love, ultimate forgiveness. At some point, we literally have to draw a line, in my opinion. We can't just let them keep running us over, assassinating people, taking over our schools, doing all our stuff. I mean, yeah, ultimately, do you want to do that through love? Yes. Do you want to do that through mercy and forgiveness and, all the great things, from Jesus? But at the same time, Jesus went in and turned over the money tables. Okay.
did.
He took action. He didn't go in there and give them mercy and say, oh, hey, let's talk this out. Let's kind of, let's try to do this. Same thing with the, with the Pharisees.
Yes.
He called out their hypocrisy. He didn't, like he was just running them out of town. He didn't try to say, hey, let's work this out. Let's try to find some common ground. I mean, at some point you have to take action. You can't just let all these things just keep, manifesting the way that they do. I mean, I'm not saying we have to incite violence.
Correct.
But we can't that's the difference between me and Jenny. I don't have a problem calling somebody a name because maybe they need to be called a name. Maybe they need to be humiliated in one where, Jenny doesn't want to do that. She's very nice. She's loving. She's understanding. That's the difference between her and I. But it's okay. I think it's fine.
Okay.
I don't turn to that immediately. That's not my reaction, is to call you names and say you're bad. I'll think about, hey, what's the best, thing for this situation? And I'm not always going to be right. I'm going to be wrong a lot of times. But I do think that we're in this situation we're in because Christians we've just let all this stuff happen. And like, as an example, with the mental side of all this. So I have pull your deal down real quick. I want to put this up.
Okay.
When I was running for school board,
mm-hmm.
and we know all the books are so horrible.
Yeah.
We proposed a book and tried to say, hey, you've got all these trans books in here about how great everything is with trans. How about
mm-hmm.
we get an actual account from someone like Abigail Schreier with Irreversible Damage? Why don't we put this book in the library? Why don't we put this book on that reading list that's
Correct.
mandatory in all these English classes so we can have a two-way conversation here? You want to talk about just complete, nose across the board. No way we're ever going to do that. Just complete shut us down immediately. We needed to take a little more action than just say, oh, okay, well, we'll just kind of work. It's never going to happen. They're never going to put this book in there unless we make them, put it in there. So to me, I mean, at some point, yeah, I do agree with the love and forgiveness, and we've got to come together more as a group. But there's times also we have to take action, especially when we're dealing with evil, because in my opinion, that's what we're
Yes.
dealing with. We're
Yes.
literally dealing with manifesting evil in that entire trans side, and that's what they're doing.
That's right. And people, they're taking a biblical view of this, and everybody interprets those things differently, and it filters through our own personalities. But you're right. Jesus flipped over tables. And if you read in the scriptures, the words in red, they're the words of Jesus. If you have one of those Bibles, no one called out evil and deception. Think about the Pharisees and the Sadducees in the policies of the time, more than Jesus. And he did it so incredibly directly. If he would lean down in the dirt and write the sins of these powerful leaders in the dirt to keep a woman from getting stoned, I don't know that it's so bad that people are pushing back against a veterinarian in Oklahoma who said some horrible things about someone who was just martyred for his beliefs. So everybody has different roles in these things. I get it. But yes, and I love there's a balance between you and Jenny, and you're on a show together, and you're the perfect example of that. You can disagree and talk these things out and come to rational conclusions for all. So yes, I totally understand what you're saying there.
Well, and just for another clarification, that's not, I'm not immediately physical action, punch you in the mouth kind of guy. I'm literally, hey, let's try to figure this out rationally between us first. And then, if it's not, then we'll try to maybe go down this, I'm a problem solver. I mean, that's what I do. I problem solve all these things across all these different, avenues in my business, my personal life, my kids, everything else. If I can't solve the problem, then maybe we're going to have to take a different course of action. And I don't have a problem going down that other course, but I do try to exhaust, in a way, every possible scenario before I, take that actual step. So like, as an example, maybe my kids need to clean their rooms. I very lovingly say, hey, let's help your mom out a little bit. Let's clean your room up,
Right.
you know, and then I may come in a day later. It's bad. I say, hey, you know, I'm going to give you a couple days to do this. And maybe I come back still not like that. You know, then I try a little, you know, different approach there. Then I may have to threaten them a little bit. And still, if it doesn't get done, you know what I do at the end? Finally, I'll just bring the trash can in and throw all their stuff out and then make them go get it all out of the trash can.
Oh,
I mean,
yep.
sometimes you have to do that, you know, to teach them a lesson. But
It's true. And Earl's daughter, so this is exactly what was going through my mind. We act as though in the face of irrational people who are saying you have to accept everything about us, everything we think, everything we say we are, even if it's delusional, you have to accept everything about us. You can't shame anyone about anything in our society. And it's really taken the guardrails off what is good and righteous and healthy for our kids. And Earl's daughter is saying, if I was not guilted or shamed as a young woman, and who of us couldn't say this, I would have been led down a very different path. I'm grateful for every harsh word that guided me to Christ. The truth set me free. So think about parenting. You take any shame out of parenting and you yay, rah, rah your kid for everything they do. Every child gets selfish. Every child does crazy things when they're adolescents. How does that end up for the child? So the role of shame in our society, it's really interesting that shame has been shamed.
yeah, well, and down that shame road, let me give you a personal example with myself. When I was,
Okay.
you know, I didn't grow up in the greatest area. I mean, we all know that. And I used to cuss like insanely. I mean, I was a major cusser. And my girlfriend, Stacy, at the time, wonderful girl, you know, beautiful Christian girl. She was always getting so upset at me all the time for cussing. I mean, I was always cuss. I mean, it's just terrible. I was terrible. Terrible. So we were just out of high school and she was going down to Texas Tech and I was at Panhandle State, and we met up one time when she came back to town, and she literally just, I just said something that was just horrible. And she literally said, so all this time she's tried all these different approaches to me to finally tell me to, you know, quit cussing. She literally said, Michael, you sound like an effing moron when you talk like this. She goes, do you see how I sound when I'm talking to you like this? And I tell you what, Katie, from that day on, I never said another cuss word, literally. I mean, yeah, every now and then, if I'm really hot or something, I may say something. But from that day on, I never, because I was so embarrassed. I was so shamed that was the perception of myself to her. And that's literally in one day, in 1 second, that literally just completely changed my vocabulary, changed the way that I talk to people just on a daily basis.
Yep, that is. I mean, shame, when someone shames us, it's a mirror put up in front of us that we need oftentimes. And that's exactly what it does. So I'll tell you a funny story in my family. My husband, he's not a cusser, anything like that. We tried to raise our kids to fill their mind with what is good. And his kids started driving and he drove someone's car and there was a CD or something in it. I think it was a CD at the time, a CD that had just some vile rap lyrics on it. So he gets in the car and those are on. And then he comes in the house, doesn't consult with me. I don't know what's going to go on. Rounds up all these adolescent kids, gets them in the living room and puts the CD on. It's just like, isn't this great? Do you hear what they're saying?
Oh my God.
Just went off on an out-of-body experience on these kids, right? But within 2 minutes, big old boys, tears coming down their eyes. This is not who they wanted to be.
Yeah. Wow.
It was a moment of shock. It was a flip over the tables moment. And that is in our society. I think about this veterinarian in Oklahoma City, and I know what he said online. For people to not push back about someone saying that about the assassination of a young father and husband.
Yeah.
Would be almost neglectful in a way to our society. That's not okay. So
Well,
there's a balance here. There's definitely a balance.
Well, and on that other side, you know, look at all these teachers. I mean, they have 70 plus or a couple hundred plus teachers posting, you know, things derogatory or, you know, to that fact with Charlie. Every one of those teachers should be gone, in my opinion. I mean, they should all be fired, period. You just, that's not the kind of people you want representing you in your school district. That's not the kind of person you want representing you, especially on our dollar, you know, to teach those kids.
Yep. Too many of personal opinions have gotten into education, and we've watched as the things that they are entrusted to under those dollars to teach our children aren't happening. That line's going down as their personal ideologies have been infused into the classroom. So yes, nobody's, and I'm saying that on all spectrums. Teach them to think is what Charlie Kirk was doing. And if you really go look at what he was doing and you really watch the videos, it's really hard to argue with that he wasn't, because he'd say all the time, you have to get that information. You have to look at all sides. You have to make your own decisions. You have to think for yourself. So, and the miss, I watched a video from a young Black influencer, a guy, and he got on and he said, look, I say things all the time about racism. I've got to be honest here. And he played a clip of Charlie Kirk at one of his events somewhere in public with lots of people. And a woman came up to the microphone. She was a young Black woman who had a little girl with her. And the first thing he said, and you can see the authenticity on his face. What a beautiful child you have. What a blessing. And then he just started talking to the crowd before she even asked her question about how children are such a blessing. And look at what this brought to this family. And that influencer said, you can't tell me he was racist. Why is this going around? That's what gets people hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an interesting conversation. And I did just want to lead people to, Karmin Greider has karmingreider.com. And what she was talking about is she looks at our sitting elected representatives, particularly those with a lot of power, she starts with, in our legislature. And she goes in and says, where's their money coming from? So as the elections in 2026 get closer, check out karmingreider.com. And she talks specifically about Chris Kennedy, who is wrapped up in the entire thing we talked about with Ty Burns, a domestically violent situation that now we know went back to 2023. There were lots of cover-ups. Chris Kennedy is his personal attorney. He was wrapped up in this legislation that they pushed through that would allow Ty Burns to get a lesser consequence, actually, barely a slap on the wrist for these things that went on. And I just want to click on this to show the work that she's doing. So this is a Republican who espouses to be a conservative Republican, okay? And we go down, and what Karmin has done, she's saying, look at the money that's going into getting him and keeping him in office. In-district individuals gave 3% of those contributions of over $1 million, and 97% is coming from the outside.
Imagine that.
So what she does, check her out. It's really what we need to know. That fact alone changes how you feel. It makes that television commercial that says, I'm the ultimate patriot and I am aligned with your values, really come into question. So,
who's he working for? Right there. Who's this guy working for? He's sure not working for the people of Oklahoma. I can tell you that. Right. And,
she talked about Brian Hill, who's now running for lieutenant governor. You go down and you look and you go, okay, 85% of his contributions during that race came from outside the district. And it gives information where you can go find more about who he is. And then Kyle Hilbert, our youngest ever Speaker of the House, 30 years old, made Speaker of the House. That in itself is questionable. If you want to control somebody, get somebody young who aspires to a higher position and put them there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's our Speaker of the House. 91% of his contributions are not coming from the people he's supposed to serve. So take a look at Karmin's work. I appreciate her so much. I know how much time it takes to dig into these things, and I greatly appreciate her. So,
let's look at your other little interesting piece of news that we need to bring to the forefront here about.
Yes, let's start here. This will be kind of short, but this is switching gears, even though now we are talking about politics. We're switching gears to some current events. Oklahoma has made the national headlines again, and it's not great. On this week on the Homeland Security Committee, Marjorie Taylor Greene talked with a gentleman named Donnie Anderson. Now, he is the director of the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics. So he works for you, Oklahomans. And there is a video out here. Should we play it? I want to unplug my earphones if we do. Should we play it or talk about it?
Yeah, if you want to play it, you could. Is that on X? You could just email it to me and I can play it if you don't want to put your, or I could see if I could find it real quick.
So let me try and play it.
If you want to play it and take your earphones out, that's fine. But you probably have to change. You probably have to change your output setting to not play it in your earphones.
Let me see what happens.
The American people
Can you hear
have
that?
no idea that Chinese transnational criminal organizations are involved and that it's leading to other extremely terrible and dangerous crimes and fentanyl, honestly. Director Anderson, how do these Chinese-backed illegal marijuana operations run? How, for the regular American, they're going, well, how is a crime organization from China able to run a marijuana farm?
These are very, very sophisticated. When I say sophisticated, this is at a level that law enforcement across the nation has never seen before, because they are that sophisticated and that complex. They're layered and they're hidden under many, many layers of LLCs and ownerships. When you begin to look, for example, in Oklahoma, you may have a John Smith who is the owner, the 75% owner of the marijuana grow. And as you dig through that thing, you'll find out that John Smith has never even been to the marijuana grow. John Smith was paid $3,500 to put his name on a license because the Chinese national can't do that in the state of Oklahoma. And that's how that happened in Oklahoma. But these, you have people in Flushing, New York and in California that run a lot of stuff across the whole U.S. that may not ever step foot in the state of Oklahoma other than to make a visit every once in a while. But these are very well organized, very sophisticated, and it's not, and whenever I talk about this, this is really a global thing that's going on with the Chinese nationals. If you look at what's going on down in Latin America, what the Chinese are doing down in Latin America, even to the Caribbean, they're building roads. I mean, they're really investing in this stuff, but there's a reason why this is going on. Mm-hmm. Once again, this comes right back to the U.S., to the national security, and what's going on in as well as to Oklahoma. But you're right. I don't think the majority of the people in the U.S. realize what's going on. Mm-hmm. People in the marijuana industry really hate on me. They think I'm just against marijuana.
Right.
I'm not. It has, for me, has nothing to do with marijuana. If someone wants to ingest marijuana, that's their business. For me, it has everything to do with the transnational criminal organizations who are doing things such as trafficking in very large amounts of marijuana. They are laundering billions, not millions. Oklahoma's probably well over $100 billion just for Oklahoma. The murders, the sex trafficking, which is probably one of the most deplorable things that we have to deal with. Mm-hmm. How we treat other humans like this, I just don't get it. But the rest of the U.S. probably don't know really what's going on. And it's not just Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma's kind of the epicenter of kind of what's going on right now because we do have such a liberal marijuana law. But the sex trafficking, the violent crimes, the underground casinos, the underground banking is going on all across the U.S.
Okay.
All right. That's pretty good. That's pretty good lead in, I think.
Yeah. He talks about 170,000 Chinese nationals coming into the country, mostly military age men, about how this is tied in Oklahoma. The legal and illegal marijuana trade is tied together. Yeah. So there's a front person, right? And they even get into over $100 billion is moving here, $100 billion. And all the crime that's coming with it, murder, sex trafficking. He says casinos, and he also says underground banking. Did you hear that part? Yeah. Talks about underground banking.
Well, and what's banking? Banking is money. That's all money that's going into these legislators' pockets outside of Oklahoma people, in my opinion, also, Katie.
Correct. Let me shift to this really quick. And I want to show you because I've been banging on this since this is 2022. Okay. The reason he said underground banking is because it's still federally illegal to be selling marijuana. There's still this federal law. So we have all these states have decided, this is what they've decided at the state level. We're going to set that aside and we're not going to prosecute it. Because now we have this thing at the state level and so-called the people have spoken, even though the people that brought in so-called medical marijuana. And you heard him say we have one of the most liberal laws in the country. Came from outside. There were big money groups that came from outside to do this. So this Chinese national thing was from the beginning. They brought it here, and now we're living with the consequences. Well, since banking was pretty much illegal, you can't take that cannabis money, federally speaking. Our attorney general, and we've been talking about this forever, back in 2022, when Visit put up the How to Steal a State series, we talked about, and you can go back to this and you can link, we talked about it over and over and over, that Gentner Drummond is chairman of the board for Blue Sky Bank. And Blue Sky Bank has a whole line of business right out there in the open that they serve the cannabis industry. Okay. And we talked about this is a massive conflict of interest. We talked about how
1,000%.
1,000%. Right. And then he turned around. So there's all this money flowing. Think about $100 billion is out there to be had. And he turned around and put $1.5 million into his own AG campaign against John O'Connor. And at the last minute, eked it out by a point, right? So it kind of showed us, if you have enough money, you can buy a seat here in Oklahoma, which is a little scary.
Yeah, it's like the epitome of pay to play. You know, you want to do business here, you're going to pay. Why don't you come to, you're going to do business at this bank, this particular bank, because you're going to be green lighted in one way or another. But you're going to have to do this in order to come here.
Exactly. Then we see him so then Gentner Drummond becomes our attorney general. That is the highest office in charge of the law of the land. Who gets prosecuted, who doesn't. And we start to see, there's marijuana busts going on of these illegal rings. And there's lots of press releases saying doing such a great job. And he put together an organized crime task force to bust all these illegal grows, right, in Oklahoma. The question remains, who's getting busted and who's not? So why are they not getting busted? And why is this guy getting busted and this guy's not? 100%, Katie. So we don't have the information to say if they're making busts on these illegal meets legal grows. So they talked about, underground banking. You don't have to underground bank if you are with Blue Sky Bank.
Yeah.
That is actually legal.
Yeah.
Money laundering of hang on, I need to get to another screen here to show legal money laundering of what's going on here. But I do want to say, we don't have, this is Blue Sky Bank, and this is currently on their website. I'm live on their website. And you'll notice here, let me blow it up a little. Still, he is the one deciding which one of these legal meets illegal grows is getting busted, that's owned by the CCP and is rolling fentanyl into our country. And he is the chairman of the board here. I'm not sure if you can see that, if it's big enough. But he is the chairman of the board of Blue Sky Bank, which has an entire tab dedicated to, if you go to business banking here, to federally illegal banking. They don't even have to go underground because the attorney general is the chairman of the board who is taking their money from, how do we know it's not illegal grows that are the front man as this person who's the director of the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics? How do we know they're not stopped from busting illegal activity that's happening with legal customers of Blue Sky Bank?
Well, and I'll tell you, Katie, there's nothing that goes on in a bank that the board does not know, let alone the chairman of the board knows every single thing, every loan, everything that goes on in a bank. So here's my alleged scenario. Okay. This is allegedly.
Okay.
You got, hey, this is like a board meeting. Hey, give me that list of every single grower in the state, but then highlight everyone that's not a client at our bank. How about give me that list? I need to see that thing.
Exactly. We are not allowed to make an open records request for the private financial documents of a business. That is not happening under federal funds. We don't get to see that. Yet this person who's now in charge of all prosecutions in the state, and is picking and choosing in other areas cases he wants to grab. The Representative Ty Burns case, he grabbed that case. There was a sexual abuse out of Choctaw with a music teacher. He sort of grabbed, and in my opinion, grandstanded with that case where, and I'm glad, I mean, every single sexual predator should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, particularly within our public schools. But he got an unprecedented sentence, and he had already confessed to everything. There was really no work to do on that case. He was caught. He confessed to everything. The victim, she came forward. She was really brave about it. But then I look at a case like in Wetumpka that we've gone to so many times, and we're still fighting that man who admitted, was recorded twice, including by the FBI, in a conversation with one of the victims, and admitted to what he was doing to boys for years through the school system. And his wife was the superintendent. He has been begged, our attorney general has been begged to come into this case because it's been sandbagged by DA Eric Johnson out in Hughes County, by the sheriff's department that has a personal relationship with the perpetrator, the investigators involved. There are reports that they also have personal relationships here. This is a small town with a few people at the top. And just recently, now we're years and years into this. We've been reporting on this since 2023. Yeah. They just, again, delayed another court hearing, and they still haven't gotten into this man's phone. We've been at this years, and he's been withholding his passcode for his phone from the court. What would happen to you if they had your phone and they knew that you had illegal images on there? They would hold you in contempt of court, and they would pull your bail, and they would put you in jail. But they have not done this. And Gentner Drummond is not interested in being involved in this case. I will tell you, another victim has come forward. They just keep mounting as this gets out.
Yeah.
And so we'll be interested to see the picking and choosing of justice. And then this. Now Blue Sky Bank has a national cannabis financing business. And Gentner Drummond is one of the leading candidates for governor of Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, and you would think having that national presence now, since you're crossing state lines with these loans, that should invoke that federal law in one where you shouldn't be allowed to finance, nationally across the country. If it's legal in Oklahoma, I mean, I can see that whole, that argument there, because we should have somewhat of our own sovereignty. But now if they're going to start doing all these loans in these other states, that should invoke, in my opinion, that national marijuana law.
Yes, I think so too. And Julia has put up here an article about them.
Keep going real quick. Go through some of those comments. I got to take a call real fast. I'll be right back.
Okay. So let me see some of these comments, make sure we get everybody in here. So we were talking a lot about the element of shame here. And Gracie says, harder for parents to counter the insinuations and innuendos than it is to counter words. It's a really good comment. And Earl's daughter, quoting some scripture, spare the rod, spoil the child. And similarly, Gracie is echoing him. Gentle parenting has gone much too far. Okay. Lisa says misplaced compassion is a real thing promoted by well-meaning Christians. I believe that as well, Lisa, who have yet to learn that this is exactly what got us to this situation to begin with. The Edmund vet did not deserve compassion, and I have offended people by pointing this out. I think we all are saying there is a place for outrage when someone posts something that vile. We also have here from Valerie, Julia say yes. And to me, that includes putting a light on darkness to expose it. Agreed. Earl's daughter. And if these teachers are saying these vile things on a public platform, what are they saying to our children in private? Terrifying. Yes. So I thought a lot about this, Earl's daughter, through this whole sort of period that we're living through. If they are wanting this material in classrooms that promotes LGBT, and they are willing to label and so-called fight for LGBT children's rights, how do we possibly think they're not going to be talking about these things in the classroom? All right, let's see what else we have here. Play it. We did that. We have no idea what this is. Earl's daughter says Drummond with the emoji face. And then Julia also pointed out this article that there's a bill that passed the House that would allow medical marijuana delivery services. No one seems to want to talk to, when we have this legislation going through, the real research about what it does to the young brain. It's like we've just sort of put that up on the shelf, that medical marijuana can't possibly hurt the young brain. And we know that up till 30, probably no one should be touching it because it does affect the developing brain. Earl's daughter says, we should have mercy on Drummond. Sure, he knows not what he does. I'm going to take that as sarcasm. I love sarcasm. House Bill 3223, authored by Representative John Echols, would create the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana and Patient Protection Act. I did not know that, Julia. I'm going to have to read that bill. It's interesting. So someone is pushing back about the harm that so-called medical marijuana can do. And Julia also says it would allow licensed medical marijuana dispensaries to contract with medical marijuana transporters in the delivery of marijuana. Oh, it's not good. In the delivery of marijuana products to patients, legal guardians of patients who are minors, and caregivers. Yeah, it's just not accessible enough right now when we have more marijuana shops than 7-Elevens in Oklahoma anymore, it appears, when you're driving around. That's incredible. The vet, Lee says, the vet got a paid vacation and not sorry at all. The owner who put him on paid vacation made disparaging remarks about anyone who complained about what the vet said.
Wow.
Again, this is what we love about the free market. You can make the decision not to do business with these folks. And if they think our certain speech is hate speech on our side, how come we're not allowed to say what we think about this? Infuriating, says Earl's daughter, and Echols is running for AG. Julia, you have just opened my eyes. The Attorney General position is so incredibly important, as is the DA of Oklahoma County. People don't realize how important that is. Those are the two people that can either decide that the folks at the Capitol, when they're doing their deeds and their dirty deeds, are either prosecuted or not prosecuted. Those two positions, it goes to the county level, and then the Attorney General can grab it. They have complete control over people's political careers, and then therefore can override our wishes.
Yeah. Well, and they have complete control over protecting these kids also, Katie.
Correct.
They could protect kids just like Lincoln and all these other kids. But
Yes.
they decide not to? I mean, is that because you can't play dumb when you have people reaching out to them, parents reaching out to them, legislators reaching out to them,
journalists.
So they're making a conscious decision. They're making a conscious decision not to protect kids.
Exactly. Furthermore, they won't even comment. I couldn't get comment from the governor's office, from the AG's office about the Lincoln Lockman case. Couldn't get comment. So not only are they not going to address it when the constituents, they're coming to you, giving you these tips saying, we've asked them to get involved. Can you make this public? They're ignoring even their responsibility to inform us what their position is on these cases.
I want to see some politicians come in here, and their number one campaign promise is, I'm going to completely overhaul and make effective DHS. Literally. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go right in. We're going to look at every single aspect of DHS, and we're going to fix that system here in Oklahoma. I mean, you never hear any of those guys ever talk about anything like that.
No, you don't. And after what we talked about Wednesday, where someone went and got a job within DHS, used the information to steal a child, and that the courts had been essentially helping her and giving her protective orders in her previous attempts against parents, protective orders keeping parents away from their own children, as this woman was trying to steal their children.
Yeah.
You look at that, and you look at the role of DHS, and that they choose not to vet. There's no other conclusion to come to, and there are protected classes.
And how about an attorney general, for the state of Oklahoma, saying, hey, website A, B, C, and D, you have a self-credentialed person damaging people in Oklahoma, we're going to file a lawsuit against you for not taking the proper precautions for your own people on your website. I mean, where's an AG that is doing something like that?
Yes, this person was falsely impersonating mental health providers and giving services to people online who have mental health issues. And it went disastrously. In the article, there are reviews for this person and patients saying, I looked it up. This person is not credentialed, does not have these licenses. This is a fake. And yet there's nothing about that in the charges that just came down that gave her a 25-year sentence for stealing a child. There's nothing. So you can't tell me law enforcement didn't look fully into her background. Okay, driving to town, Lisa says, driving to town, you see 20 dispensaries in Oklahoma for every one in California. You can barely find them in California. It's weird, isn't it? I have so many around where I live. It's really disconcerting. And then also most, not all politicians start at a local level. This is why it's so important to be diligent in voting in local elections. Correct, Gracie, you need to catch them at the roots for sure. So I know that's a lot. We went all over the place at the end, but to see Oklahoma and an Oklahoma official sit in a Homeland Security Committee and talk about how hundreds of billions of dollars in illegal Chinese trade are coming through. And what we know, there's a chance that there's a good amount of this illegal activity that could be protected by our sitting AG who is taking their money into his bank.
Yeah. Well, and you know, ultimately, what's a bank's business? What do? They want to issue debt. They want to collect interest. I mean, that's their business. So, you know, are they going to, you know, kind of skate around things if they have the chance and there's not really anyone pointing fingers and looking at them very, very close? I mean, yeah, they're going to. That's just how it is.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've had it happen. We had a local bank in Oklahoma fail not that long ago. So you're right for those kind of practices. Okay, well, you've had a great audience here today, and our sincere prayers are with Jenni as she has surgery today and recovers. And we will all be thinking about you, Jenni. We love you. We want you back quickly.
That's right. And I don't know who we have coming on next week. Jenni didn't send me the schedule, but whoever it is, I'm sure it's going to be fantastic.
We'll get it out there on your social media so your viewers will know.
All right. I think we hit all the comments. I think we did, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Don't forget, Jenni's got her tickets live. And I just want to say two things. First, to you, Katy, just how fantastic it is to have you on here. See your beautiful face. We know who V1SUT is now. And just all the work you do. I mean, you know, without you, we wouldn't know all this stuff. We wouldn't know how deep all this corruption is at DHS and these other places, how bad these kids are being treated in the school districts. Look at the amount of articles and just everything you've put out in order to expose just how bad it really is in these school districts, because literally no one in our state paid positions anywhere that's supposed to be in the oversight positions, none of them are doing it. There's no one in any local politics that's showing anything like that, or anyone is standing up for all those people. So I appreciate you so much.
I thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I want to point out there's just a growing network of independent media. Back in 2022, launching the Visit site, you felt very alone, but the truth is there's a network behind the scenes, and I see so much good work like this coming out of so many people now. So when you see those articles, I share a lot of them. Support those folks. They are really sacrificing to bring truth to you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you and just the trailblazing that you do to hopefully inspire other, you know, citizen journalists to come out and you know, to kind of pick an area and just go get them in some area. And, you know, Jenni's been doing this for a long, long time. I mean, I really appreciate Jenni. I have a lot of respect for Jenni and you just for, you know, it's easy to just unplug, go on social media, watch TV, you know, do all that stuff that kind of the rest of the public does. And that's why we're in the situation we're in. if people stayed engaged, plugged in, and really just thought and said, hey, this just doesn't look right. Start asking some questions. I'm truly believe in my heart, we could turn this thing around in a pretty short amount of time.
I believe it too. I believe we're all called to do it. And that said, if you are, and you know what? I have a degree in journalism. You don't need it. It doesn't do anything for you in this world. Now they're just brainwashing kids. So I could crumple that up and put it in the round file. If you like to write, if you are a natural researcher, if you would like to be part of that fight, email me at visit.com. Every single piece that I put out has the email for the publication. Let me know. I have given people press passes to go into a lot of these public meetings so that they can cover these things. I will put your stuff up on my site. We need soldiers, and I'll be that platform anytime.
Great. Thank you, Katy. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
We'll see everybody Wednesday.
Okay.
And Jenni, I'm sure Jenni will be back. So
you got this, Jenni.
Yeah. Thanks again. All right. Bye, everybody.